Welcome to GPCA TV and welcome to the 14th Annual GPCA Forum. My name's Mark Thomas and I'm the Markets Editor for Chemical Week magazine, which is owned by IHS Markit. I'm joined today by Eelco Hoekstra, who's the CEO of Royal Vopak. Welcome, Eelco.
Thank you very much.
I'd like you to start today, if you can. You talked in your presentation about the importance of sustainability, care of the environment, and I'd like you to really just talk about how Vopak is currently delivering on this.
Yes. Well, as I said this morning, I think, and that's the reason why we're here, is that the products that we produce in the chemical sector and that actually we handle are vital to people's lives on a daily basis, right? We use it on every day. But the other side of the story is that these products are possibly harmful to society. They might be explosive or carcinogenic and obviously high in value. So we see it upon ourselves as prime responsibility to take care of those products in the best way possible. Not only for ourselves but society at large. If you look at so safety and sustainability, I think there are three areas where Vopak feels itself obliged to focus on and to make a change for the better. I think sort of our first and foremost priority is actually to take care of what I would call sustainability parameters very close to what we do today. And that is, first of all, safety. I think it starts first and foremost with making sure everyone gets home safely, but also the process incidents, to make sure that we don't have any of them and to protect any product to be harmful to the environment at large. So I think if you look at all that as well, energy saving programs, everything is very much confined to what we do today, do substantially better. And I think there are very obvious reasons why we need to do so and continuously put resources against them. The second bucket, I would say, is to look very critically at our portfolio in the longer period of time. And with that I mean is that if you look at our footprint today, where it's geographically, but also which products we store, we need to ask ourselves the questions, are these the vital products that society requires in the longer period of time? So we have proactively started already in the last 5 years to actively divest and start deploying that capital into new BD, new business development, particularly with the intention to, first of all, to go into areas which are less hydrocarbon intense, let's say lighter ends than the heavy ends. So we divested oil terminals, we've gone into more gas. We've recently acquired LNG terminals, for instance, in Pakistan and Colombia. We're investing more in chemicals. So what we try to do is to try proactively assist sort of society and our customers to at least have the infrastructure available to already deploy, let's say, newer hydrocarbons, I would say. And then the third area of attack, and that's where we also in the presentation discussed, is that we think we need to look even beyond that and look at sort of what are the new energy carriers and what are the new feedstocks of the future. And therefore you can look at, for instance, hydrogen is an interesting piece of the puzzle. CCS we need to look at, because if you want to make hydrogen today, it's most likely going to be blue hydrogen. I'm sure that you know the difference between blue and green. You need to look at possibly flow batteries, so also to store electrodes and to have opportunities to use liquids in storing electrodes. So these are just a few areas where we've started to not only deploy, let's say, resources from a human perspective point of view, so FTEs or people. We also made a few small investments like we did in hydrogenous technologies recently in Germany. So answer your question, I think there's several ways of looking at it. Short-term safety, less emitting of VOCs, energy. In the midterm, change your portfolio to become relevant long-term, and a little bit further investing in new technology. So this is how we look at that as, within Vopak.
And obviously Vopak has a very long history, well over 400 years, I believe. For the last 20 years or so, you've had a very good relationship, a good partnership with SABIC.
Yes.
I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about that relationship and where it currently is now and how that's evolved.
Well, as an opening remark, we see partnerships as an integral part of business. So we actually start with partnerships in mind from the start, because we think, I think was mentioned today as well by several speakers, if you find the right partners, it really complements the project, and the deficiencies or the weaknesses that you have might be very well complemented by the partners that you seek. So we have about 35 partnerships globally, and almost all of them, I think all of them are really long-term partnerships in which we have these relations for 20, 30 years actually with them. The SABIC one is really special. I think it started, because it started small and it's sort of expanding on that thought. As I said this morning, it started with only to advise on how to operate and maintain, because that was our core business. It has evolved now in investing jointly, and what I really like is that we are sort of professionalizing the terminal as we move along. And since SABIC is reaching out its views over how to distribute globally, the relationship is now a global relationship. So I think that one is really, really close to our heart.
Partnerships obviously are something that is a vital part of any development on the petrochemical side in the GCC region. You spoke about the importance of optimizing the terminal aspects of any project as opposed to possibly having an over-designed terminal or one that's not perhaps fit for purpose. Could you just explain a little bit more about what is an optimal terminal and how Vopak can help deliver on that?
Yeah, for me, an optimal terminal is one that's viewed through the lens of manufacturing, but also viewed through the lens of the supply chain itself. I made that comment this morning, is that sometimes when you look at only the manufacturing side, you look at the down cycle of the plant, but you don't consider that your tanks need to be fully optimized then, because you need to be able to deliver your customers. Second of all, when you look at redundancy in your terminal space, it also provides you in time to have sufficient maintenance of your terminal. So those are just two very visible things that we like to inculcate and bring in. And what we've developed as Vopak is we call it a flow model. Is that we've basically designed a model which has all the unit pricing in it. We take not only the manufacturing side, but we take the logistics. We bring the logistics questions to our partners and say, okay, what's sort of your ideal scenario for how you'd like to let's say deploy your supply chain in the next few years. And if you put that data in, you can actually have an interaction which might last days or weeks, in which we can change the parameters, and customer will see instantaneously what the effect will be on the capex that he needs to spend on tanks. So he or she can make very informed decisions on where to create redundancy, where to create the optimum supply chain for logistics, and so on and so on. So I think that is one part of the puzzle. The second thing is that we have become exceptionally practical on learning from all these terminals around the globe on what works and what doesn't, particularly in the detailed design. And also there I've seen is that when we came in afterwards, we would come into infrastructure and say we would never build this way, because it's either impractical or might even be unsafe, or a few implications there. So my plea is get us involved early on to get the optimum result out of it. So that was the comment I made this morning.
And lastly, talking about getting involved early on, you touched upon the hydrogen subject earlier. Again, I wonder if you could just give us a quick insight into Vopak's work in terms of developing that sort of supply chain for hydrogen.
Yes, well, I'm intrigued where if you look at the energy balances is going in the next few decades. I'm just intrigued how let's say electricity will be a larger part of the energy mix going forward. And I think everyone by now understands that will be happening, because we see a huge build-up of renewables, particularly taking place not only this year, but we expect it to move going forward. The thing with electricity is you cannot store it in large quantities. So and it depends on whether the wind blows or whether there's sun. So we think there's huge scope of thinking of sort of conceptualize on how the electricity can be stored and can be utilized in different geographies. And we think there's a whole world out there that might convert electrodes into liquids, and possibly later back into electrodes, but most likely used as a liquid later on. And that's a phase whereby we see green energy through electrolysis being put into play. You can look at moving it as hydrogen, and then we say, well, hydrogen is a bit dangerous to be moved around, so you need to probably put it into a different form or shape. So the LOHC, which I mentioned, liquid organic hydrogen carriers, is one that we are taking seriously through investment with Hydrogenious. It might be converted to ammonia, which makes sense. It might be converted into methanol, or maybe even another form of liquid. And what we are trying to do as Vopak is to conceptualize how the world will look like. And so we are engaged with different actors, either in LOHC, ammonia, methanol, or others, to see what it is and what infrastructure is required to make that work ultimately. And as I said, these are all very interesting discussions on available technology, pricing, business models, which I think if we sit here today, it's really hard to completely visualize how that will work. But I think we should look at this in a period of 10, 20, 30 years out on how that might develop. So that's an exciting part for us to consider.
Okay, Eelco, thank you very much for joining us today.
Most welcome. Thank you.